What's up, faithful? You're listening to another episode of the 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast. I am Brian Renick, and I am joined, as always, by the legendary Al Sacco. Al, we previewed this game. We recorded on Thursday, and you should have gone with your gut because you said when this schedule released that your gut said that this could be a loss. In fact, if I remember correctly, I don't know if we both did, but I know I predicted a loss in our season preview just based on the situation. But then this team came out and just lit the NFL world on fire for 5 straight weeks. And we thought, hey, you know what? There's very little chance that this team is probably going to lose this game. And guess what? The 49ers lost to the Browns 19-17. There's a lot to talk about in this one. How'd you feel?
It was all shit. It was all shit, Brian. All of it. The whole damn day. No, listen, here's how I'm looking at this game right now. I'm a big Yankee fan, as most of you listen to this show know. And Joe Torre, who's the legendary manager for the Yankees from 1996 to, I think, 2007. And the Yankees were always really good during those times. So what Torre used to say when the Yankees would come out and suck and just have a horrible game, he'd say that was a turn-the-page game. That's all it is. And we're coming back tomorrow. And that's what this was to me. And what that means is this is not the team that you are. This is not the team that you're going to be most of the time. It was a horrible day. They stunk in so many ways, and we'll get into it. But at the end of it, you have to turn the page and just move on to next week and continue to be the team that you are. That's what I feel like they're going to do. I said on the show earlier, if they lose, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to go crazy. It was a frustrating day for sure. There were things that happened that worried me. There were things that happened that I kind of think just happened in a vacuum and they won't happen again. And then you move on to a Vikings team you should destroy. So that's where we are. But having said that, this game was frustrating as hell. Yeah. Frustrating as hell. Here's where I thought the first. Yeah. Sorry. I was gonna say the first big Niners came out and first drive looked great, right? They looked like they wanted to come out and really punch with the Browns. They're gonna be physical and run. And the Browns they had 2 big penalties. They pushed McCaffrey going out of bounds. There was a face mask. And then they have a nice touchdown where they take advantage of Myles Garrett being overly aggressive. Purdy flips the ball to McCaffrey. It's 7-0. And all of a sudden, here we go. We're right back where we were. The Niners look great on offense. And then Fred Warner, the Browns were surprisingly moving the ball. And that'll be a theme we'll talk about too. But then Fred Warner comes up with a big interception, runs the ball inside the 30. And I thought he just took all the momentum the Browns had and just squashed it. And now you're ready to go up 2 scores. But you have a screen pass that loses 8 yards. They had another negative play. And then Moody, this 3-yarder is not anyone's fault, especially outdoors like that. That is not an easy kick. I'm not saying that Moody was at fault for this.
Yeah.
Well, Miyoko said that it wasn't windy when he kicked it. I read a tweet. He said there was no wind.
The first kick that he missed or the second one?
The first one, I'm pretty sure I read a tweet by Miyoko saying that there was really no wind when he kicked that. But it was 54 yards. Either way, win, no win, it's not an easy kick. But what that play did to me was it just sort of changed the game in the sense that I think if the Browns go down 2 scores, they get a little bit deflated. They didn't. And now all of a sudden they have new life again and it's a different game. And after that, things just got a little bit ugly. But that was the first play to me where I was like, oh, we may come back and look at this as being a big one. And not just a field goal, but the negative plays before the field goal. And it ended up being big.
Yeah, and when we previewed this game, we said this is the biggest test the 49ers have faced offensively, right? That the Cleveland Browns defense was no joke. And that bore itself out. And that was the thing is, that first drive, like you said, they came out and they marched down the field and they scored a touchdown. And you thought, okay, like this Browns defense is good, but again, this 49ers offense is operating on just another level. And football is a game of momentum, and I feel like, to me, I think the momentum shifted when Trent Williams went down. Now I know that he came back, but I think that rattled the team because I would argue, outside of Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams is probably the one player that you cannot lose on this team. And he went down and it didn't look great. He came back and He even said after the game, which I appreciate, he said, I gutted it out because I didn't want to put the team and Jalen Moore in a bad spot going against Myles Garrett, who is arguably the best pure pass rusher in the NFL. I think full stop. And that's no shade to Nick Bosa. I just think Myles Garrett is just a bit more physically imposing than Nick Bosa is. But again, that's no shade to Nick Bosa. I think that's 1-2 in terms of top guys in the NFL. And so that one, I think, kind of took the wind out of the sails a little bit. And then, Schwartz made some adjustments, obviously, because that team, again, marched down the field. And then outside of that first drive, offense was really, really, really difficult to come by the entire game. That Cleveland Browns defense is no joke. They are the best defense in the NFL. And in my opinion, it's not even close, because this Browns team, held down a 49ers offense that was averaging 34 points a game, held them to 17. Meanwhile, the 49ers defense, which is really good, allowed a PJ Walker-led offense without Nick Chubb to score 19. And that's where I feel like this was a game where the defense needed, the 49ers defense needed to be the 49ers defense, because the offense, it was going to be difficult to come by points, and they weren't. And that is, that's really to me, the story of the game. Not that the defense played bad, but again, you're talking about a PJ Walker led offense. You've got to really impose your will on that. And they didn't. And so, the offense didn't play well. Brock Purdy didn't play well. Christian McCaffrey left the game early. Deebo Samuel left the game early. There's just a lot of things that went wrong, but you also got to look at it and say, with everything that happened in this game and with how poorly Brock Purdy played for basically the whole game, he still brought the team in field goal range to win the game. And that, to me, is a promising thing to take away from this game, is that, again, despite the adversity, when the game was on the line, he stepped up and he led them down and put them in position to win. He can't kick the field goal, so there's not a whole lot you can do there. But there's a lot to take away from this game, both positive and negative. To me, that's the biggest positive, though.
I tweeted right after all the things that stunk, and there was a long list of things that stunk in this game. And let's start. Well, let's start. I guess I'll group this into the passing offense, and with that, I'm going to group in the offensive line, Brock Purdy, and even Brandon Ayuk, who had a couple drops today. Yeah. Now, you mentioned points were hard to come by, and you were right, but there were two plays that there are a lot of plays that would have changed things around, but two that I'm going to point out that would have changed everything. The first was on a 3rd and 13. I think it was beginning of the second quarter, end of the first. I don't quite remember, but Purdy's got pressure in his face like he did a lot of the day. Yep. And he chucks one downfield, and Brandon Ayuk is beautiful throw with pressure right off Brandon Ayuk's hands.
Yep.
If Ayuk comes down with that, even if you get 3 there, it's different. The other play was towards the end of the second quarter. Browns jump off sides. They had a free play. Christian McCaffrey is wide open. Yep. I mean, there was nobody around him. Easy touchdown, and Purdy airmails it. Yep. Which was a theme for Purdy today. Purdy was really inaccurate today. A lot of balls were sailing on him. He was throwing behind some people. I mean, he stunk. He stunk today. He had a few good throws. I thought that throw to Ayuk was good. He made some shitty throws and some good throws on the last drive to set up the field goal attempt. But overall, he stunk. Did he have any protection? No, because the offensive line stunk today. It wasn't very good at all. So they had a hard time getting any rhythm on offense. But even with all that, they might have had 24 points at the end of the first half if they hit on those two plays. Yeah. That's just those little things that they couldn't do in this game that was really frustrating. And then Deebo gets hurt. McCaffrey ultimately gets hurt. They said Deebo should be okay. McCaffrey, as when we're recording this, they don't know yet, which we'll talk about that because that's a little bit scary. You mentioned Trent Williams was at best banged up. So that was just them that's just in the first half, shooting themselves in the feet with those plays, because as hard as it was for points to come by and as ugly as this team looked, they might have had 21, 24 points at halftime if they just hit on a couple things.
Yeah. Yeah, this was the biggest test that this offensive line faced all season, and they failed miserably. I mean, if we're just being perfectly honest, they failed miserably. Spencer Burford just had his lunch money stolen snap after snap after snap by Dalvin Tomlinson, and Purdy had no time to throw. They were not biting on play action. And to me, I think one of the biggest takeaways is there aren't very many defensive lines like the Browns have in the NFL. The 49ers have one, but I will say this: in December, they will face one in Philadelphia, and they are going to have to be significantly better than they were today if they have any hope of winning that game. And to me, it really highlights, I guess you could say it highlights one of the weaknesses of this Kyle Shanahan offensive system, and that is this offensive system, and you could argue most offensive systems. So, I mean, I don't think this is unique to the 49ers, but this offense is reliant on being ahead of the chains in order to be efficient and in order to be as explosive as we've seen it be through the first 5 weeks. And if they're not, they struggle significantly. And it's because there isn't much of a drop back passing game in this offense. The passing game is tied so intimately with the run game and with play action and with boots and things like that, that if that stuff isn't working, there aren't a ton of just straight up 5-7 step drops and 3-4 wide receivers out in the pattern, to come back in games if you're behind or whatever the case may be. But not only that, this offensive line isn't built to pass protect in the traditional sense, a drop back passing protection scheme, right? They are built to be a fluid offensive line. They are smaller, they are lighter because they have to pull, they have to move, they have to get to the second level in the run game, all this stuff. And this has been a weakness of a Shanahan offense since Mike Shanahan was coaching offense, right? They always had smaller offensive linemen because they needed to be more athletic. They needed to be able to do they need to be able to execute those reach blocks. They need to be able to execute those pulls, all that stuff. And that's great. And when it's working, it's gangbusters. But if you're behind and now all of a sudden you've got to, like I said, you've got to just rely on a straight up drop back passing attack, it just isn't really there for them, both in the playbook and as an offensive line. And so I think that is to me one of the biggest things that led to what we saw today. And one of the reasons why they struggled so much, because Cleveland just absolutely stole that offensive line's lunch money, snap after snap after snap. And like I said, there aren't many that can, but there's one that exists in Philadelphia. And right now that's the team that you have to beat if you're hoping to get to the Super Bowl. So that's a concern for me.
Yeah, and that's your main competition. And I understand that long term, that is a concern. That's something that I think, I'm not saying it's a glaring, oh my God, something needs to be done, but it's something you're concerned about right now. It's for sure something that's going to hop in your mind that, okay, down the road, like you said, against a really good defensive line, are we going to have issues? They did in the playoffs against Dallas the first 3 quarters. I know that didn't show up last week, but they did last year, those first 3 quarters against Dallas. But as I go on with this, I do want to reiterate, I think the Niners are going to be fine. I think this is a blip in the road. But what we're doing on this podcast is reviewing week 6. So we're speaking to what we saw today. So before I got to hear a million people in like comments and everything else, like, oh, you guys are haters, blah, blah, blah. We're not saying we're worried. We're talking about what happened today. That's it. Okay. Just putting that out there. So the other thing that happened today is we go through things that stunk. I thought this defense stunk. And you say, wait a minute, Al, 19 points. They had 2 turnovers. Bosa had a big sack. Yeah. Okay. That stuff happened, but let's look at the whole game. They stunk. This was a PJ Walker led offense. Maybe they really missed Dre Greenlaw, who didn't play today. Well, they certainly missed Dre Greenlaw, who didn't play today. But if you look at what happened in the game with the Browns, they possessed the hell out of the ball. They had 334 total yards to the Niners, 215. They ran 34 times for 160 yards. And there were some times when it looked like they were just could do anything running the ball on a couple plays. When they needed big stops, they're getting 15 yards, 20 yards on a few plays. And it was definitely very frustrating there. Another thing that's not going to show up in the box score are the throws that PJ Walker missed. There were a few instances where there were wide open Browns receivers, wide open. And PJ Walkered it. Could have been a lot worse. In the 2 turnovers, the play by Warner I thought was a good play. He kind of read it. But the throw to Lenore he just threw it right to him.
Just
it was a terrible throw. Yeah, awful. Then he almost got picked towards the end of the game, thrown in the end zone. I mean, PJ Walker really tried to give this game to the 49ers. And I said towards the end, the Niners defense was sort of bend but don't break the whole game. But towards the end, you cannot let PJ Walker drive down the field. Now, there were 2 awful penalties. Awful. So another thing in this game that stunk, the officiating. It was a sloppy game. There were how many total penalties between these 2 teams? 25 accepted penalties between these 2 teams today for 204 yards. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. But towards the end of the game, you get the defenseless receiver penalty on Gibson, which was bullshit.
Awful.
You have to start reviewing these. You have to. If the refs cannot have enough wherewithal to keep flags in their pockets towards the end of games, and they don't, because we see this constantly, unless it's an obvious call. If it's a borderline thing like that, keep your flag in your pocket. They just called that because it looked bad. He didn't go near it. He didn't hit him in the head. He hit him in the shoulder. It was awful. And then call, whatever they call holding on Ward.
On Ward,
Are you kidding me? If you look at that, you call that the most ticky-tack play, holding call, awful. And even if it is a little borderline, again, I'm of the belief you don't call that stuff at the end of the game. So was it frustrating that those 2 things were sort of handed to the Browns? Yeah. But was it the next play, Jerome Ford just broke like a 15-yard run? So those things happen too. The Niners D had to come out today and pick the offense up a little bit. And they didn't really do that. They didn't play awful.
No.
But given the circumstances, I thought that they should have played better. For today in a vacuum, I thought they stunk as well.
Yeah. And that I think more than that holding call, the call against Gibson, the unnecessary roughness penalty, Rich Madrid, who is a 49ers Twitter legend, he tweeted that the refs are always going to err on the side of caution. And that is likely because the NFL ignored concussions for so long that now it's like, now they're overcorrecting. Right. And I get that. And that's fine. And I won't even argue against that. But here's the thing. If you're going to err on the side of caution, then those penalties should be automatically reviewable. They just should, because the review showed clearly that was a clean hit. And I also understand that in the blink of an eye, that's a difficult call to make, because it looked awful. It looked awful on TV. I can't imagine what it looked like on the field, but that's my point. If you want your refs to err on the side of caution, then you have to be able to correct an incorrect call. Not that the team should be able to throw the flag. That should just be an automatically reviewed by the booth. It just should be. And that should be part of the conversation. And like I've said in the past, there are very, very, very simple solutions to this epidemic of shitty officiating affecting NFL games week in and week out. And the NFL refuses to address it, which tells me, as Herm Edwards has always said, if you are accepting it, then you're essentially coaching it, right? If you're allowing it to happen, then you're essentially saying we're okay with this, right? And that's what they're doing right now. They're just saying, look, we know that our refs blow calls all the time. we also know that it affects the outcomes of games more often than it doesn't. And we're okay with that. And that's just nonsense. That's not for the, the richest sports behemoth in the United States to accept shitty officiating is kind of pathetic, if we're being perfectly honest. So you cannot blame the refs for this game. The 49ers, and we said this as well. I don't know that the Browns beat the 49ers. I think the 49ers beat the 49ers, but I do want to give credit where it's due. The Browns played a hell of a game on defense. They have a terrific an incredible defense. They are terrific, and they are better than the 49ers on defense, and I have no problem saying that. And kudos to Jim Schwartz, because that is largely the same personnel that they had last year when they sucked. So he has had a huge impact on this team. And, once again, Kyle Shanahan lost to Jim Schwartz. He's 1-9 now. So obviously Schwartz knows a little bit something about defending this Shanahan offense. And I have to think that, teams are going to start watching this tape to be like, hey, what is it that he did that kind of slowed them down? And, not every team has that defensive line. So, it's not going to be exactly the same, but
if you need a wet field and a great defensive line, that's not always going to happen. So
yeah. And I am hesitant to blame the weather, because it did rain, but it didn't rain the whole game. And I don't know, that just, to me, that feels a little bit like an excuse more than a reason. But it was obvious. It was obvious especially to end the first half, that Purdy was struggling with a wet ball, and that could be an issue moving forward. He has the same size hands as Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jimmy Garoppolo had trouble throwing the ball in the rain as well. So that could be an issue for him. Yeah, small hands. But those are the kind of things that all of this talk about, like, we need to see Brock Purdy in adversity or whatever. That's part of the adversity. And today he didn't necessarily answer the call. I still think it was impressive for him to lead them down for a chance to win the game, after playing the worst game of his career. But ultimately they lost this game. And like you said, it's time to move on to Minnesota.
All right. Another thing I wrote down that stunk, Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
And what I wrote about Kyle Shanahan that stunk was
the 4-minute
basically his clock and game management at the end.
Yeah.
Now, let's start with when the Niners are up 17-16 with 3:21 left in the game.
Yes.
They get the ball. The Browns have 2 timeouts. You want to run some clock there, force them to use their timeouts there. That's kind of football 101. The offensive line was getting abused. Purdy was not accurate. He was having the worst game of his career. And Kyle proceeded to throw the ball 3 times.
3 straight times. Yep.
They go 3 and out and take 16 seconds off the clock. What the hell was the thought process there? I don't have any idea. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know. Jordan Mason was doing pretty well. He was having 5.4 yards per carry, I think, or something like that on the day. He did okay. You don't trust him to get 1 there?
Yeah.
That was bad. And then the other play, for the other time, it was at the end of the game. He seemed very content to kick a 41-yard field goal instead of maybe trying to get some extra yards
with 1 timeout left.
Yeah, you got a timeout left. You have time left. Do a quick run. Even if you get 3 or 4 more yards, it might help. He lets the clock go down, and Purdy spikes it with 7 seconds left, and then you're kicking a 41-yarder for the next person who stinks, and we'll talk about him. But for that to happen, to me, the clock management was awful at the end of the game. And that was, again, there were a million reasons why they lost, but that was a big one too.
Yeah, I think of all of that, to me, the biggest blunder was calling a pass on first down, right? And because ultimately that required you to then call passes on second and third down because of calling a pass on first down.
Right.
That, to me, I'm like, I just don't understand why there was not a run play called. Like, you are overthinking it at that point, because to me, my thought process, if I'm trying to get in Kyle Shanahan's head, is they know that a run is coming. So it's probably not going to be successful. So let's do play action, see if they over pursue, and and maybe we can catch them by surprise. Again, you're getting too cute by half there, right? Just run the ball. You just need to run clock. That's all you need to do. And force them to use their timeouts. Even if you run the ball 3 times and you don't get a first down, at least now you force them to use their timeouts. Like, it's not just about it's not just about getting the 3 first downs to ice the game. There's a lot more that goes into the thought process there. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think I read that he kind of said as much, like, I fucked up in the post game press conference.
Did he say that in the post game?
I believe that he did. I could be wrong. I thought I saw something essentially addressing calling those plays with 3 minutes and 12 seconds left, or however long it was. But and then I also, when he did not attempt to get more yardage for that field goal, to me, what that was conservative, Kyle. And that was, I don't even want to give the opportunity for them to force a fumble or something along those lines, right? He was coaching not to lose rather than coaching to win, in my opinion, when he made that decision. And that's another, I think another blunder at the end of the game. Again, are we saying that Kyle Shanahan's an awful coach? No. But I do think that game management and clock management is still largely his biggest weakness as a head coach. And I don't even think it's close at this point.
And we have to criticize. He deserves to be criticized there. You can be Andy fucking Reid, who has traditionally had some clock management issues himself, or Bill Belichick, or whoever. If you handle the end of the game the way that Kyle handled it today, you deserve criticism.
Sure.
Again, for this situation, it doesn't mean you're like, oh, what? Who else would you rather have coach? Nobody's saying that. No one is saying that. This team is still going to be a team that's going to win a lot of games.
Yes.
And may play in the Super Bowl. But for this instance, for today, he deserves criticism for how he handled the end of that game. And Steve Wilkes probably deserves some criticism too for whatever the hell that defense was doing out there today as well. Mix up some blitzes, something, man. So the coaching staff today wasn't happy. Part of what stunk. What else stunk, Brian, that I wrote down, and I put a bunch of exclamation points by this one. Jake Moody.
Yeah.
And we don't know with Jake Moody if this is going to be, again, it was just a bad week 6, and he's kicking big field goals in January. That could very well happen. We don't know. But for today, you use a 3rd-round pick on a kicker and fail to re-sign Robbie Gould, who hit those kicks an awful lot. Pretty clutch, Robbie Gould. And you bring him in to win that game, and he misses it. It wasn't the 54-yarder that we talked about earlier, which is just, what are you going to do? A 54-yard kick you can't go crazy outdoors.
Right.
It's 41. You need to make that kick, and he did not. And he ended up now having a really bad day, and now there are question marks about him in a big spot. And the only way we're going to know differently is next time we see him in a big spot. And there were question marks about him at the end of the preseason, and he came out and answered those. He did a good 5 games. But now today they needed him in a big spot. They needed him to win a game for his team, and he didn't do it. So now we don't know. We don't have anything in the past that we can say, well, I don't care about what he did at Michigan. I don't care. We don't have anything in the NFL in the past that's going to say, okay, this guy's going to hit big kicks. It was just whatever. He missed it today. Again, maybe a wet field, whatever. He just missed a kick. We don't know. So right now, that's another thing, like you said, with the O-line. I'm not screaming like, oh my God, this is a huge issue. We don't know. It's something, again, just kind of put in the back of your head and say, this could be something to worry about.
Yeah. And we were getting dangerously close to me having to give him another pep talk because he kept kicking kickoffs out of bounds, and he hasn't done that in a while. So kudos to Jake for fixing that problem, whatever that was, or Brian Schneider finally being like, all right, we're going to stop trying to, kick it at an angle and try and force a return, like just kick it in the end zone. And that's great. So kudos to Jake, but this one's tough. This one's tough because this is the first time that he's been relied on by his entire team to make a kick and win the game and he missed. And
Mhm.
you got to wonder what that does to somebody's psyche, especially a player who I guarantee has heard plenty about how ridiculous it is that this team spent a 3rd round pick on a kicker.
Mhm.
And, somebody on a team full of all pros and pro bowlers and veterans who are busting their ass to win a Super Bowl. And you got to know, listen, there's going to be probably at least 2 or 3 more times this season where you're going to be in this position. It might not necessarily be at the end of the game to win it, but it might be at a point in the game where it is imperative that you make this field goal. And are you going to be able to flush this loss and flush that missed kick or those 2 missed kicks, right? Because again, the 54-yarder, it is what it is. But if he makes that, he doesn't have to kick that 41-yarder because they already would have won the game. So, it's twice that he missed, which essentially cost them the game. Both misses, you could say, cost them the game. So at this point, you just have to hope that if the situation arises again, he is ready for it and things are different. But if he misses, if he misses another easy one, then you might have to hear another pep talk, because I got a lot of egg on my face right now because I defended Jake a lot. I defended that pick a ton because to me it made sense, but this is an ouch for sure. And I would say that and I'll be perfectly honest, if this does happen again, if he misses another kick that costs the team a victory, I would not be surprised if following that game there is report of some soft tissue injury or something of the like to Jake Moody, and Robbie Gould is wearing the red and gold again because he's still out there and he's still available. And for a team with Super Bowl aspirations and a shitload of cap space now, paying Robbie Gould is not nearly as big a deal as it was when they decided not to. So
Yeah,
I don't think that I would not be surprised in the slightest if that happens.
and we'll see. He still has time to redeem himself, but we know
Sure.
draft status doesn't mean shit to this team. They just traded away a quarterback.
Yep.
They took 3rd overall.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if he's not getting the job done, especially with this team ready to win now. I agree. They would do something. I don't know if they would cut ties with him, but I agree with you. You could see like, oh, hey, he's hurt. That was not really hurt, and you do something else. But I think we're a little bit away from that still. He can obviously redeem himself. Injuries stunk, Brian. Dre Greenlaw, they missed the hell out of him today. And one thing with this team, they don't have the depth at line. They don't have an Al-Shaair to come in anymore, right? To come in and he's not as good as Greenlaw, but someone that can make an impact. I don't know that there is another guy there to back them up anymore.
Honestly, I didn't feel terrible about how Oren Burks played. In fact, he had that touchdown saving tackle on Amari Cooper, which to me was incredibly impressive because it showed that, Burks has speed, but he's not anywhere near the level of Dre Greenlaw. And that is quite evident. And I wouldn't be surprised or Al-Shaair for sure. Al-Shaair balled out against the Ravens for the Titans today, which was awesome to see. I was glad to see him playing well. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you see the 49ers extend Greenlaw again, right? They extended him to like a 2-year deal before the beginning of last season. I wouldn't be surprised if we look at it or if we hear relatively soon that they've extended him again. And obviously it's going to be a bigger deal than the one that he got, but this defense, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw largely make this defense what it is. And when Greenlaw is off the field, the defense feels it. So
I thought it was evident today.
It's big time. Yeah.
And also with Debo not being out there, how many games like this have you seen where the Niners just the offense isn't moving and they throw him a little screen pass and he just does something amazing? Not having that again available. Another thing takes a lot out. I mean, the Niners have a ton of weapons and they can get by without him, but we've just seen he's a special player, and special players make special plays in games like this, and not to have him out there again, huge. And obviously with CMC too, I thought, Kyle probably does run if he has McCaffrey at the end of the game, because he loves McCaffrey. McCaffrey would have gotten the ball there in some capacity those 3 plays with 3:21 left. So it definitely changed the way Kyle called the game, not having McCaffrey, and that worries me a little bit too. It is a gigantic drop off from anyone, from Christian McCaffrey to anyone.
Yeah.
Not just on their team, really, to almost anyone. So they're going to feel that. So it looks like Debo is going to be okay based on what we heard tonight. Hopefully that
X-rays negative. Yeah.
Okay. And he's not out for a little while. But McCaffrey, last we heard it was an oblique, and we don't know. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to see how that goes. Are they going to be okay against Minnesota? Probably. Then you have Cincinnati. Then you have a bye. Let's just hope that it's something he can get back from quickly, because obliques can linger. So
yeah, soft tissue issues are never anything that you want when you're hoping that player gets back on the field, because they can be unpredictable. And he came out and he ran that ball one time and then immediately went back out, and you're like, oh no, that's not great. He ran to the locker room, which I thought was a good sign. But and then Trent Williams obviously is another one.
Yes.
He left the game in a walking boot. Again, not something that you want to see. Is that, do you give him a week against Minnesota, which doesn't really have a very good defense? Maybe you might want to think about that. But yeah, this is the first game where the 49ers have come out of it with some concerning injuries. And we talk all the time about this team and how good this team is. And then we always throw the caveat, health permitting, which, is an NFL caveat. It's not just a caveat for the 49ers, but yeah, injuries, and that's the other thing is what happened today was that the 49ers met their physical match in the Cleveland Browns defense. They're not used to being bullied. They're used to being the bullies. And today they got bullied, and they didn't respond like they have in the past when that has happened, in that, they come out in the second half and they kind of, Kyle makes adjustments and they start getting the ball out quicker and things like that. And it's surprising to me. I don't feel like they really made any second half adjustments on either side of the ball, which is the first time that I could say that all year. And that was a little bit surprising to me, and that goes back to, the coaching and to me, the one silver lining is CMC extended his streak with a touchdown, which I thought was awesome. But every other awesome streak that was going is dead now. So
yeah, the 30 points,
Purdy ended up being the last QB1 in the NFL for the 2023 season to throw an interception, his first interception, because Stroud had thrown it one earlier in the day against the Saints. But yeah, it's in a loss like this, like I said, silver lining, CMC extended that touchdown streak. And then for me, the biggest silver lining is, despite being shitty all day, Brock Purdy still led this team to a potential victory at the end of the game, which I think answers some questions in terms of how he responds to adversity. So kudos to Brock, and it's time to turn the page.
Might be as bad as they'll play all year, and they still should have won. So then
this is his worst. This is his worst game as a pro, for sure.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll say before we get out of here that stunk is I talked last show about how good my betting went last week, and today.
Oh no,
just on the shitter. Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it was I'll mix in things on the money lines. We had the Niners and a few things on the money line. They just had to fucking win. And Philly just had to beat the Jets. Jalen Hurts just threw an interception. Jets scored that got run back to like the 8-yard line. Jets put it in for a touchdown, and now Zach Wilson is kneeling for the win. So Philly is
Let's go Jets.
What a weird week, man. What a weird week.
Jets. I'm sorry you lost your bet, Al, but that's huge. I appreciate that, because I was watching before I came into the office to record this, and I was like, hey, it was like 14-12. I was like, these Jets are giving the Eagles all that they want, and I love it.
And the Jets have life at 3-3 right now. They got life. It's crazy.
Listen, Kirk, I know you're a family man, but come on, man. Come on. Go to the Jets. Do it. Go.
They won today.
The Jets.
They won today too. I'm probably not going to trade him.
Well, he already said he already said he wasn't going to waive his no trade clause.
I didn't see that. Did he say that?
Yeah, Kirk said that this week. He wasn't inclined to waive his no trade clause. So that's why I said, I know you're a family man, and I think that's largely why. But Come on, man. Although, you know who was on the field today freaking throwing footballs around? Aaron Rodgers was at the game on the field pre-game throwing footballs, not even in a walking boot. That is insanity.
That would be a cool story if the Jets can kind of hang around and get in the playoffs and Rodgers comes back. That would be
I mean,
cool.
That Jets defense is going to carry them. And I mean, it's like the 49ers of the past. That defense can carry them as long as Zach Wilson doesn't burn the building down. They're going to win games for sure.
Seattle loses, they go 3-2, right?
Yes.
3-2. Rams win.
Yep.
They beat the Cardinals, who are going to be nothing. Rams are 3-3. So those teams are hanging around with the Niners. I'm still not super worried about the division at all. And props to the Lions, who go in and win a tough game at Tampa, 20-6, and they're 5-1 along with the Niners and the Eagles in the AFC. So that's going to be fun. Lions are fun as shit to me. I really like watching them. They're a good story. They should win their division going away if everybody stays healthy. And maybe they're going to be right there with the Niners and the Eagles. Who knows?
That Lions defense has been really good to start the season, which is was the big question mark going into the season. We knew the offense would be good, but and that offense, it looked really good with Jameson Williams in it, who was back. And that
their offense
makes them even better.
Really good. Offensive line is terrific. So it's going to be it'll be fun, man. We'll see. Listen, the Niners weren't going to 18-0, right?
No. Or
17-0, sorry. Wasn't going to happen. So they're going to lose. They lost today. They're going to lose another game. Probably 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Just the way the season goes. So don't go too crazy. I think next week they're going to bounce back big time, and we will break that all down. We're trying to get a Vikings beat writer on. I reached out to a couple today. We'll see if we can get them on and talk about the Vikings. Try to get somebody on to talk about them. See how that goes. So
yeah, I would like to say to anybody listening, please do not put on the timeline at all this week anything about Sam Darnold or Kirk Cousins or anything of the like. There is no reason to overreact to this Brock Purdy game. Like I said, these things are going to happen, but ultimately he put this team in position to win the game at the end, and that's really all that you can ask for in your quarterback. Let's move on. Let's turn the page. No talk about Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold or any other quarterback being in red and gold. Brock Purdy is the quarterback. Kyle Shanahan and this team love him. They believe in him. He had a down game today. He will bounce back. It's one of the things I love most about him. On to Minnesota.
All right. I'm going to go throw some money on the Bills-Giants game to try to make up for my shitty day today.
Do it. Good luck.
For Brian, I'm Al.
Later.